money, people, you don't have access to any of this stuff, right? You're starting with maybe 50, 100K, 200K, maximum 300K. So when you go talk to the bigger guys, when they sit there in front of you and say, okay, well, we're going to do market research for a month and waste hours, and they charge you per hour, and they just go and waste hours on market research. What are you market researching on, right? And studies have shown if you run a design sprint and it only lasts a week, and just do a test with 5 to 10 people, that does more for you than doing research for 50 people, 100 people, and asking random questions that doesn't really help them understand, right? Users are famously bad at understanding ideas. That's why you're the entrepreneur, right? So the number one focus, make sure they have a product team. That's number one. And two, they understand your business strategy, and they're going to build around your business strategy. That's the key. And they're giving you advice, because if they're not giving you advice, then you're really not, you don't have a good team. Because I will always give advice, because I'm understanding where your business strategy is. And I go, okay, well, here's all the pitfalls that we've seen happen regularly. Yes. So avoid this, right?
Yeah. And one of the things that, I've gone through this, as you know, I've gone through this myself in different ways. So I remember once I was building out a website, and I got into getting a quote, and the guy said he could do, we had a real list of deliverables. We went through it. I paid for 50% up front. When it came time to publishing the site, he said, I need the other 50%. I said, let's go through the deliverables. And he kept saying, oh, I used a template, so we can't do this now. We can't do this now. We can't do this now. And then he held me hostage because he said, well, I'm not going to publish it until you pay us. So what we did was we published it. And I had to go and get someone to rebuild the site with the criteria. And the second guy from that experience, money, you're right. Money, our small business people, we don't have a lot of money to spend on this. Nope. So you want to get it right the first time. But I learned from that mistake in terms of vetting people, right? Because the second guy came to me and said, oh, all these other things that he's added to your list are costing you money you don't need, and started to kind of tell me why and give me that explanation. So question to you, there's a whole bunch of, like I said, soup to nuts in terms of the guys that talk about the market research. And I'm not, I don't want to put down people who have different models. I just want to know, how do these non-tech founders vet? What are some of the things that you need to be asking in the process to vet people to do a project for you?
So, and here's the thing is, like, with founders, you're as a non-technical founder, I can give you guys a list of things to ask, but realistically, you guys aren't even going to understand the responses, right? So the way I always present it to non-technical founders is understand what it is you want to do, right? And understand what you need to hear from the dev team, rather than asking the right questions, right? So a dev team, if they're asking you, what features do you want? Okay, well, that's going to cost extra because we got to throw a calendar in there. And you're just verbalizing, here's the things I want. And they're not asking you any questions back about, why does that impact the user flow? How does that make it easier for someone to sign up? How does X, Y, Z? And they're not asking you about the business workflows and the concept. That's a red flag. Right? That means they have no idea what it is they're actually building for you.
Right. And it's that business case. I get it. You're saying if they don't understand and can articulate your business case in terms of how you're going to use it and kind of play it back to you, that's a red flag. Yeah, that's really
correct.
Great.
And then the second part is, if that is happening, I mean, look, a lot of dev shops will not be able to do that, right? A lot of dev shops are genuinely not tuned to try to understand your business. I mean, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. That's where you kind of transition and find yourself a product team that can help you, because they can lead the dev team, right? That is their job. A product team is there to lead the tech team, right? So if you're not getting that from a dev shop, look for a product team. Because a product team will always try to understand what it is you're trying to do on a business strategy and what the value is for the user, and build around your business model.
Right. And they can probably, and again, as non-tech founders, you sometimes don't even know the right questions to be asking.
You have no idea.
You have that product team personnel or team or person that can help you in that process. They can help you navigate that process. And the other piece I like about that is that they're not necessarily tied. They're not tied to that company, so they can vet those different developers for you, right? So they can say, hey, this is why I would recommend this one over this one, and they can give you the actual facts. So they're on your side to kind of help you identify that.
Hang on. And that's exactly why we split our services now, right? So we are actually we've always been successful on the product side. We've always crushed it there. Right. The way we're able to ask the question, extract everything from the brains of the entrepreneurs, which is not easy, by the way, right? Extract all that information and be able to build it into a product. That's where we've always thrived in. So we are now splitting it because we're now saying, okay, look, you have your own dev team, great. But trust me, you're going to need someone to actually coordinate what you want versus what they're going to deliver. And so again, a product, if you're going to hire a co-founder, understand that you're going to have to pay for dev shop or dev team, not a shop, but like just devs.
Yeah.
But hire instead of hiring a CTO to code, hire a CTO that will be your product specific, because they will translate the product significantly better. And then the other aspect is if you get an experienced person, they'll know all the pitfalls in terms of strategy, right? So reducing the friction for signing in. Right? Signing up for the product, user flow, user design, like all these things.
Can I just jump in while you're talking about that? So one of the issues that I see too in this space is, when do companies decide, we're going to hire a contractor to develop it, but then when do they, when is that, with that trigger to, when do we actually hire versus use a contractor? What are some of the things? And you're leading into that discussion right now, right? You're talking about that, but I think as founders are building out their company and their roadmap, I think that's something else that they need to start thinking about is, internal hires versus external. And I think often, and you can kind of join in and just tell me, but I think often the case is that they start with the contractors to help them kind of get there. And then they start bringing on people in their team to be able to help with the tech. Because it's as tech is built, it's not just a one-time gig, you need to update that tech. So can you talk about, when does that role pivot from a contractor to actually bringing people on your team with the expertise?
Yeah, so great question. One thing I'll say right now is, what I need everybody to understand is, it does take a team to build a product in software, right? I mean, if you look at all the different roles, you have the QAs, you have the developer front end, back end, you have infrastructure, you have UI UX. Typically UI UX, or rarely you can find someone that's both UI and UX, so split that up probably. You need a project manager if you're going to be the project manager, right? And you need a product person to be able to do all the translations. So as you can tell, there's a lot of roles involved in creating a product, right? So if you're going to hire internally, just understand that you're going to be missing a significant amount of pieces of the team naturally, right? But at the same time, make sure you hire accordingly. And I mean, what I mean by that is, if you're going to skip everything, do not skip a product manager, and do not skip a good back-end developer, okay? Because a bad back-end can just destroy your product fully in terms of experience and everything. And a lot of people don't see back-end, so everyone just kind of oversees, kind of glazes over it. So there's a lot of factors there, right? And one of the biggest mistakes that I see all the time is, and especially in Canada, there's a lot, Denise, there's a lot of grants out there for hiring students, right? And students are fantastic when they're coupled with experienced people.
Totally.
Right? Because they're coming in, they want to learn, they want to get that experience. A lot of times what happens is, I don't know why this happens on a regular basis, but founders hire students assuming they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So they hire a student because they got that grant, and then lean on them very heavily.
Yeah.
Right. And then that student crumbles because the student is a student. They've learned theory.
I've actually had clients who, and this is another issue that I see in small companies, is they have one senior developer and then they bring on a student, right? To
That's
kind of
more work.
And
That's more work for the senior.
Yeah, and then if the senior leaves, the student leaves. So then they have no one, because if there's only just one person in that team, it becomes an issue, because the student's saying, well, I can't lead the project. We need someone senior to do that. And I can't do my work unless the senior's there. So it can cause a ripple effect. So yeah, that it's an important thing to understand what you need in terms of that recipe, to kind of, move from, getting a contractor to kind of develop it. And then what's that transition like, Sep? So, there's different models in this space where people can say, okay, you develop it. Now we've got those players in our team and now we can take it over, and that's great. But what the different models in terms of, people continuing to have those contractors oversee and manage that. And then when that handover happens, what's that like? What would be that time frame if someone had the people to bring on?
So in order to answer that, I think we have to be very realistic about what the cycle of a startup is, right? Almost never is it worth you building an internal team right off the bat. Almost never. The maintenance, the headaches you're going to go through is insane. Now, if you have a very, very experienced team, that's a completely different story. So I am talking very generically. So if you do have the team, then experienced team, and you have the connections, that's a completely different story. So I'm just talking general startup, okay? So what you need to focus on as a startup at very first is market fit, right? So what you need to prove to me, like, again, and when I say me, I mean, like, pretend like you're trying to raise capital, right? Because that's the startup game for the first 4 to 5 years, right? So the first thing I need to do is build an MVP and put market fit, which means I have a handful of people paying for my product, right? Does it matter who you hire to do it? Here's the difference. When you hire a dev team, yes, they're more expensive up front, but then they're cheaper on the back end, right? As soon as you launch the MVP, right? Like, you don't have to pay the salaries, right? Keep in mind, devs are not cheap. Devs are anywhere between $8,000 to $15,000 a month, right? And so if you got 2 or 3 of them, you're burning $40K a month to hold them on staff while you're trying to get market fit. Yeah. So cash flow wise, would you not rather spend that $40K on marketing and sales efforts, right? So once you're past that, then you can start going for that series, like a seed level investment, right? In Canada, US, completely different models. So I'll kind of go with the Canadian model because we are primarily talking to Canadians, is the fact that you could probably raise another $500,000, right, on a seed, right? And based on that $500,000, you still don't have that space to kind of hire a dev team internally, right? So again, with that $500,000, you want to dedicate as much as you can towards the product, towards the sales and efforts, because now you got to show how you're planning to scale, right? So when you raise that, it's towards your go-to market strategy. Right? So we still haven't gone to the product side. So where you start needing to transition from an external team to an internal team realistically without burning too much money is at around that Series A level. Because at that Series A, now you're going into scale. Now you're probably going to start pivoting a little bit because you're going to start building product a little bit more tailored made to the customers you've already got on. And a lot of times what happens is, founders will just run and build a product. I don't know why this happens. They never talk to customers. I have no idea why.
Actually, and I'm going to jump in here because this is a perfect fit, because I work in the funding space, and there's federal and provincial funders, but all the funders are saying, as their first, you're leading into one of their key things is, tell us about your client discovery. So you think this is a great idea, you think it's good, you want to spend all this money, you run ahead. But have you done your client discovery to find out, is there a need for this? And who else is doing this in the market, and not understanding their competitors? And people will say all the time, oh, there's no competitors. And I'll say, well, they're spending money on something.
Red flag. Red flag.